Chris Hensley is a registered representative of Cambridge Investment Research, Inc., a broker-dealer member of FINRA SIPC, investment advisor representative of Cambridge Investment Research Advisors, Inc., a registered investment advisor. Cambridge and Houston First Financial Group are not affiliated.
The Houston Midtown chapter of the Society for Financial Awareness presents Money Matters with your host, Christopher Hensley.
Good morning, everybody. You're listening to Money Matters on KPFT Houston. I'm Chris Hensley. The time is now 11 a.m. Got a great show lined up for you today. We will be speaking with Bill, who is Bill McCance. He is the chairman and president of TAG Group, which is a RIA and a broker-dealer. And we're kind of going to go into a few of the hot topics of what's going on in the investment industry right now as a whole. Got a great bunch of topics here lined up for you, so keep listening. Stay tuned. We will do a deep dive into these topics. But if you are a longtime listener, you know that we always reserve just the first few moments of the show to tell you a little bit about what's going on in the Houston and the Gulf Coast area when it comes to financial literacy. So I know if you've listened, you've heard me talk about Houston Money Week 2020. That's hard to say. We're here in December. We're getting close to the end of the year, and we're already planning for Houston Money Week, which takes place April of 2020. We did yesterday have our last leadership team meeting, and so we're getting, as we find out each and every year, we get ramped up, we plan, and before we know it, it's already here. We will not be meeting again until next month and into the new year. So we will see all of our partner meetings, partners meet in January of 2020 in the new year. But we do have a lot of events that are already getting started. We're doing some of the planning. I think one of the biggest one that takes off first is the Houston Hispanic Forum's Career and Education Day that we've done, I want to say the last 3 or 4 years. This is a great event. It's free. It's at the George R. Brown Convention Center. And so what I've done in the past is done college planning talks, but we have other speakers from Houston Money Week as well that will deal with money basics for students, for high school students. The event as a whole is huge. The George R. Brown Convention Center takes up 2 city blocks, and usually they will bus students in from all over Texas for this one event. One of my favorite things is that they will have career panels. So maybe they've got law enforcement officers, people from NASA, engineers in the STEM, and the kids actually get to pick the brains of the careers that they're thinking about going into. So a little bit of everything. It is free. It's open to the public. They even have free lunch for people who attend, as well as if you have kids that are younger than middle school or high school and you need somebody to watch them, that is something that's available there. So and that's not taking place until February, but it is a big event, and so you can go to HoustonHispanicForum.com. It should also show up on our website, HoustonMoneyWeek.org, as we get closer to the event. Houston Money Week, it is a nonprofit initiative. It's a citywide initiative involved with nonprofits. There are for-profits like the banks that are doing Community Reinvestment Act. We also have colleges and high schools and universities involved in it as well. So I would encourage you to go to HoustonMoneyWeek.org to find out more information about how you can get involved, or if you're interested in having a speaker come out to your work or your synagogue or church or what have you. We have speakers available for April of 2020. With that, let's go ahead and get Bill on the line here. Bill, are you there?
I'm here. How are you?
I'm doing great. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me on.
Well, so usually I'll introduce you the same way each time. So I want to, and you've got a pretty big bio here. So let me go through this. Bill serves as the chairman and president of TAG Group, Inc. It is a diversified financial services company, and it owns a broker-dealer as well, an RIA, registered investment advisor, and insurance general agency. You started your career back on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange and held a variety of positions for specialist clerk to CEO of an independent broker-dealer. Bill, what can you tell us about yourself outside of that bio so listeners can get to know you a little better?
Well, I've been in the business since 1983. I started as a 19-year-old on the floor of the exchange and realized that was my passion. And the industry was my passion, and I left college at that point in time, and I consider myself the luckiest man on earth because there's never been a day I haven't wanted to go to work. And so I am completely committed to the industry and our clients. We now have over 115 advisors and some 3,000 plus clients with a little over $1.4 billion under control. Between the different entities at the firm. One of the things that I love about this industry is it's always changing. I never have the same day twice, and we are currently going through another change in the firm with some of the topics that I think you're going to want to touch on today.
Absolutely. So that's one of the things in our industry. It's a moving target here. Things change. And we get used to one thing, and then they change it up on us. One of the things that we wanted to discuss was a new decision out of Massachusetts that has to do with the fiduciary standard. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we've been discussing this fiduciary standard for a long period of time, and to break it down into its simplest parts. If an individual is receiving a commission for selling a product, they are immediately conflicted to an extent. They benefit from the sale of the product, and so the question is, whose interest is coming first? The individual who is earning a commission for selling a product, or the client who's actually buying the product? And this has been inherent and is inherent in any sales practice that's out there. A number of years ago, during the Obama administration, the Department of Labor decided that it wanted to delve into this discussion, and they came out with a rule that said every advisor was going to be held to the standard of a fiduciary, whether they're operating for a registered investment advisor, which the fiduciary standard currently exists, or whether they operate as a broker earning a commission. And the rule, in my opinion, was badly written and eventually was overturned by the courts with them stating that why is the Department of Labor delving into securities law? They really don't have the grounds to do that, and so it was never enacted. Since then, the Securities and Exchange Commission has come out with a rule called the best interest contract, and that means that brokers need to put the best interest of their clients. And it was a delicate balancing act that the Securities and Exchange Commission walked in reference to this. They have an obligation to protect the clients, but they also have an obligation to protect an industry that they supervise, and they tried to do what they felt was the best they could in that. And that now is indeed law. It will come into effect in 2020, and we will all have to abide by that particular regulation, which states that we must put our clients first, the firm interest and the interest of the actual representative second. A number of states thought that particular rule, because it did walk that fine edge between the industry and the individual client, wasn't strong enough. And the first was the state of New Jersey, and they came out with their own proposed regulation in which they would declare that a broker or an advisor who dealt with a client residing within the state, domiciled in the state of New Jersey in that case, would have to follow this particular set of rules laid out by the Secretary of State of the state of New Jersey. Massachusetts has now followed on. I happen to be in Massachusetts. That's where we're headquartered, and Secretary Galvin, our Secretary of State, is a strong proponent of individual investor rights, as am I, and has decided that he would like to propose a fiduciary regulation for the clients that reside in his state. It's not an actual rule as of yet. This has to go through the process. He proposes the rule. It then goes out to a discussion period, goes back and forth until it eventually either does or does not become a regulation within the state. And so that's what's occurring right now.
So I'm listening to this and I'm totally following it because the broker-dealer I'm with, they wanted to get ahead of this, and it was on again, off again. we got all lined up for everything, and then things changed. But the best interest contract, that's something that we eventually ended up with. But so looking at it from the public's view, when you talk about people holding themselves out as fiduciaries, isn't that something that they're already? What does that mean to me as John Q. Public?
Yeah, it is interesting. What does it mean to you as John Q. Public? And one of the problems that we have always had is the term fiduciary is a complicated term. And individuals either operate as a fiduciary or they don't operate as a fiduciary. And because it's complex, I'm not sure the client really understands it. And one of the fears that I have in reference to regulatory action in this particular light is we're going to go to our attorneys as a firm and we're going to say, how do we meet this regulation? And they're going to come up with some legal document that we're going to ask you as a client to sign. Of which, it will have lots of words that were written by lawyers, and the majority of you didn't go to law school, and neither did I. So to understand what's going to be put in front of you and you're going to be asked to sign, stating that you're completely aware of any conflict, et cetera, really is an unfair ask of the individual client, in my opinion. The premise behind all of these regulations and the premise behind the state of New Jersey and Secretary Galvin's act here is a great premise. The client should come first. We at our first put the client firm first. We put the advisor second. We put the firm last in that order. And if we do that every single day, the firm ends up winning because it ends up retaining the client for a long period of time, which is beneficial to us. It means that the rep stays with us for a long period of time, so our acquisition of talent cost goes way down, and in the end, the firm wins. So we're fully behind this. The area where we have difficulty is, can you imagine? There are 52 entities, 50 states and 2 districts that would have the ability to make fiduciary regulations. And if each one is different, each one places the comma in a different location, it throws the rule off. And for us to be able to monitor that and abide by each of those rules becomes extremely cumbersome for us, the broker-dealer. And to fight that, we're going to have to hire more staff, buy more technology, and in turn, drive the price of the services that we offer our end clients up.
Right. And I agree with everything you just said there. The basic premise that you mentioned, that the client always comes first. The normal person would say, isn't that how it's supposed to be? If you just do the right thing. But in reality, there are people out there holding themselves out as financial coaches, or it can be the wild, wild west if it doesn't fall under some kind of legislation. So the premise is really, really good, but how that actually gets implemented in the specifics on the industry side, as you mentioned, if you sit there and you put the best interest contract in front of a client and it's 20 pages long, how realistic is it that they're going to look through it? So and even just on the broker dealer side, having to get in front of this as the rules are kind of changing, that's a huge thing. So I think this discussion kind of helps the client understand, why we're looking for more transparency. But what does it actually involve when we get into the weeds, the specifics?
You're absolutely right about that, and the people that actually need the protection, I fear, are the ones that are going to get the least protection out of this. And so I'll give you an example. We had the crisis of 2000, 2007, 2008, 2009. And in that crisis, it was clear that the banks had been, bad actors in a lot of ways, and Congress decided that it really wanted to give a little payback to them, and they were making billions of dollars, near trillions of dollars, in something known as swipe fees. That's every time you use your credit card or debit card at a store. And to get back at the banks, they decided that they would cap the swipe fees at well below what the average swipe fee was. And their intent was, well, if we save the store owner money by charging them a lower swipe fee, they'll pass that on to the end client, so the end client will benefit from it because cost will go down. Well, we all know that once someone's paying someone, no one ever reduces the price. So it didn't benefit the end consumer on the end. But what it did cause was it caused the loss of free checking. From 2000 to 2007, almost anyone in the United States could get a free checking account at any major bank as long as they took a debit card, and as long as they used that debit card 4 times a month, they were given free checking. There now is no longer free checking in any banks because the swipe fee was capped. So now those on the lower end of the economic scale can't afford to have a bank account where they're being charged $28 a month for the right to have a bank account, and they're having checks cashed at stores and at check cashing locations. That wasn't the intent of the law, but it's what actually happened. So if we are put under a regulatory burden that is high, and we have to raise our costs, or even worse, decide we're going to raise our minimums, and then we're only going to deal with individuals of net worths of $500,000 or higher because it's the only way we can afford to operate under these new rules, who's hurt? The young people who are just starting out and just starting to save for retirement and haven't amassed a large enough nest egg, or those that are living on the margins that need to save more for retirement but haven't. So that's my worry, and that's what we hope that the regulators will come together and come up with one regulatory scheme for the whole country so that it is easier for us to operate, and one that makes a lot of sense. There will always be bad actors, whether we have a fiduciary rule or not. The majority of famous bad actors that we all know about operated under a fiduciary rule. So bad actors will always be there. We just need to make sure that clients understand what they're buying, what the cost of what they're buying is, and how it affects them, and make sure that advisors and firms disclose all of the dollars that they're going to receive when making a decision to invest a client's assets.
I love it, Bill. We're not going to solve this one today for sure. We'll put a pin on this topic. I actually, on my website, I have a video that I did like 2 years ago when I was talking about the Department of Labor ruling. So I'm probably going to have to go and update. but this is a moving target. Well, this is a good transition, as you mentioned, young people and things that the exclusivity of when you make adjustments and changes. One of the things that you are passionate about and like to talk about is the idea of succession planning, or advisors who In fact, this comes off of an article off of Investment News where they were talking about advisors aging and then either exiting the industry and selling their business or not. And one of the, Michael Kitces, who's a big talking head in our industry, said that, he was pushing for, well, why would you retire if you had this? Tell me some of your thoughts on this.
This is a passionate thought of mine. So there's a couple of statistics that I just want to throw out there. The first is that our industry is aging. The average broker/advisor in the industry is over 59 years old. The second statistic is there are more advisors over the age of 70 than there are under the age of 30. And part of this was due to the fact that we had the quote-unquote Great Recession. So people didn't want to get into our industry because it was a particularly difficult time. As well, the technology industry was taking off, and the technology industry was offering individuals unlimited food and bicycles and all sorts of things, and a very nice wage. So and training programs were stopped at many of the firms because revenue loss due to the recession. So one of the problems that we have right now is we have a number of advisors that are aging, and they're doing something which we call retiring in place, which means in a bull market, it's really easy to do because this business becomes a little bit easy when the market is moving in the right direction for the majority of the time. And they're not showing up at the office on a regular basis. They're not meeting with their clients as often as they should be. They're harder to contact. And I really think that that's a tremendous disservice to clients. So we at our firm have built a new division where we are bringing young people in. We've started a training program. We are training them, and we are actively going out to advisors that are older and experienced and asking them to mentor our advisors and allow us to purchase their book of business from them and allow them to have an active role in how their clients are handled after the purchase. So we think we married a little bit of both worlds, where we've got the old and experienced and teaching the young and energetic. We think the client is going to get the best of both worlds in this avenue.
So I love it. I think that's a great idea. I tend to agree with you, and this is my own personal opinion. I'm an independent. It's just me and my assistant in my office. But when I did work at a wirehouse, the culture there, as you mentioned, advisors retiring in place and maybe not even coming into the office. These are the guys in the corner offices that were out golfing. If you're putting your faith in the advisor, and you're expecting them to kind of have their finger on the pulse of what's going on in the market, it's an argument that, are they doing that?
Absolutely correct.
And so the idea that a lot of these advisors are aging, and that there may be, you opened by saying how much you love what you do, and I'm kind of the same way. I'll have clients that are either they want to retire or hey, I'm never going to retire. I'm going to work till the day I die. Well, advisors tend to go on that side, but should they?
Correct. And maybe they shouldn't. And so. We're trying to answer that by giving them a little bit of the best of both worlds. We're not trying to kick you out of the industry or make you go away wholeheartedly. We just want you to bring on and work with someone who's got the energy to work 100% of the time, and then for you to impart your tremendous knowledge that you have gotten over years of work, and that's of tremendous value. And for you to pass that knowledge on to one of our younger advisors, we'd really appreciate it. We think your clients would appreciate it. $23 to $30 trillion is going to move from one generation to the next generation over the next 15 to 20 years. So that's an outstanding number. And I can tell you this, that those inheriting those funds don't want to work with their father's gray-haired advisor. They want a young and vibrant advisor that texts and FaceTimes and uses technology and all of that. because that's how they operate. And so I think it's important that the industry transitions to that type of work environment.
So I love that. I like the idea of matching the elder advisor with the younger and that mentoring relationship. And you also mentioned selling the book of business. And so from an individual retirement perspective, when I hear retiring in place, sometimes those people don't have a plan. And the retiring in place is the plan in lieu of nothing. And so by having the idea of selling the book, that's succession planning. That's putting, even if you don't do it, you've got something in place. You've got that plan B. How valuable is that for a business owner to look into the succession planning?
That's one of the problems that older advisors had, is they came into this business, but they didn't look at their practice as a business. Every real business has a succession plan in place so that the business will continue on past them. So the example that I use is if you have an individual who has a registered investment advisory firm, and it's them as the only registered investment advisor, and they walk out the door and they're hit by a bus. The clients are out in the cold, and the value of their practice has gone to zero overnight because there's no one left to sell the practice. Only the advisor can sell the practice, and they're no longer with us. So one of the options that we offer out to advisors is we'll enter into an agreement with you where if something happens to you, you become disabled or die, we'll enter an agreement to buy your practice the day we're notified of that so that your clients will always be covered. So we'll give you an instant succession plan. For individuals that don't work for our firm, we'll do that. We do have a small charge for doing that. We charge $500 because we have to maintain records in reference to your business and your practice and all of that. So the day we have to step in, we can indeed step in. But it's very important because one of your largest assets is your firm. And if you don't protect that asset with a succession plan, the potential is that it will just go by the wayside and you'll lose, and your heirs will lose the advantage of that.
Absolutely. And from an advisor perspective, that's all very important. But if we were talking to our clients, we would be telling them the same thing. So if we're telling them, hey, you need to look out for your spouse, your children, make sure that if something happened, you're protected and that you have everything lined up and you got a plan, well, we need to practice what we preach. Advisors, too, we should be held accountable for it. Well, we've got just a few more minutes. We've got about 3 more minutes. There was one other topic that came up, and I don't want to go too far into it since we've got only the 3 minutes, but one of the things that we had talked about was the comments that Ken Fisher had made recently at a conference in San Francisco. Tell us a little bit about that.
Ken was at a conference, and he was one of the keynote speakers at the conference, and he made a comment that was sexist in all way, shapes, or form. I don't think anyone can deny it. Or what the intent of the comment was. And the unfortunate part about it is our industry in the 80s had an awful reputation in reference to how it treated women. I think our industry has come a long, long way from that time frame. And this unfortunately, I think was a setback. When I look at my business plan, I look to recruit over 50% women to our new division because I think that they are empathetic, they're intelligent, they have the ability to problem solve, they are perfect for the financial services industry and dealing with retail clients. But unfortunately, they don't apply for the job because of the reputation that the industry has had in the past. So we're working really hard, and I think a lot of firms are working really hard to bring women into the industry, and all I hope is that the foolish comments of one individual doesn't hurt the reputation of the industry as a whole. We had our Me Too moment in the 80s. We listened. We moved forward. We tried to make it a better environment for women. And being the father of 2 daughters, I hope that all industries end up doing the same thing.
Absolutely, I totally agree. And on our side, I think Ken thought this was going to blow over. It didn't. Even Cambridge, my broker dealer, the CEO, they adopted a new code of conduct based solely on this incident. They came out and I think other broker dealers are kind of adopting that, and he got a lot of pushback or blowback on that. So, well, Bill, thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of Money Matters Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, visit us on the web at www.moneymatterspodcast.com. Drop us a line on SpeakPipe on the right-hand corner. It will receive any voicemails, questions, thoughts, concerns that you have about the show. In addition to this, we recently launched a Patreon campaign. Click on the Donate Now tab to hit the tip jar and find out what Patreon's campaign is all about.